Hello, yes. I didn't seem
That
to
makes
have the
my day
option.
so much better.
Yeah, I
I'm
didn't
so
seem to
sorry
have
about
the
that.
option on my computer, weirdly, so I'm just going to plug a microphone in
Yeah.
to my phone. 1 second.
Yeah, I also had to do that. I'm so sorry. And I want to apologize to everybody for this. I had Zoom up and running, but it wouldn't connect to, I do digital marketing. That's my day job for 4 different pages. And for some reason that it would only connect to 2 of them. So I was like, yay. But I'm really appreciative of Tom for his understanding and patience for this. We're just going to be talking about 30 minutes about shelter welfare, dog training. If you don't know about Tom Candy, you should know about Tom Candy. He does amazing work for Dogs Trust. He's highly certified in the field. He has a microphone, which is a little bit fancier than I do. I have cats who will probably talk to us throughout the conversation. Right, 1 second. Hi, Spark. Oh, there you go. He just told me off. So yeah, Tom is incredibly certified. He's also APTC certified. I'll let you tell you a bit more about yourself and introduce yourself. But also before we begin on that, October 1st to 31st, you are doing part of the Trainers for Rescues speakers, and I'm so excited to have you because your experience and your education is so needed in this field. So I really appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be part of the conference. I think it's really great that there's a conference that's going to be focusing on welfare, particularly in shelter and rescue. It's a big passion of mine. It's why I started Simplifying Shelter Behaviour, which is a Facebook page and podcast that aims to get good information out.
Mm-hmm. No, I did shelter welfare in China for 9 years. I went across Asia to help with shelters, and so I've been doing a bit of that work here, but I've kind of gone a bit more in housing because of the social economic issues in Calgary. But yeah, it's incredibly important. And if you have not yet gone to Tom's um, page, it is tagged in this live, but it's also he also has a podcast which you can talk about.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, what can you tell us a bit about your podcast?
Yes, yeah. So I started it at the end of last year, and like I said, the aim is kind of just to get some experts in the field who do really great work in behaviour in shelter and rescue, and just talk about the different problems that we face. And the aim is that it's helpful, practical tips and tricks that can be kind of taken away and then used in the real world.
Yeah. Norchi, who's another speaker for the Trainers for Rescues, just says that she loves your work and your page.
Thank you very much.
And that's actually one thing that I think people don't realize is that shelter welfare can be really cheap. It can be like making a wind chime out of the seashells that you have on the beach, to, just playing music. We have Spotify, we have all of our phones. And I think one thing that I notice when I walk around shelters is the noise level is so high, and it's so stressful for me, let alone the animals that are, in the environment. And part of your presentations about the cheap and easy ways that you can improve shelter welfare. Can you talk, or kennels environment? Can you talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, definitely. So I think you're right. I'm really lucky. The organisation that I work with in the UK, we've got sort of state-of-the-art facilities, which is amazing. But I also work with a lot of rescues that have, kind of the basic standards of what people expect of kind of kennel setups.
Yeah.
Which means we've kind of got to think a bit more about how we utilise that space, but also, what we can add to those animals' lives to make the shelter experience as good as possible for them. And exactly like you said, that could just be cardboard boxes from Amazon. Quite a few of our sites, we've got a second bin in the toilets that just collects the toilet roll innards. And then that gets used for enrichment. During the summer, you can just fill a metal bowl with water and some hot dog juice and some treats and make a nice little sort of popsicle. So there's definitely some really cheap ways that we can get about. And we're going to be looking at some of that during my presentation, but also how we can use Linda Michaels' hierarchy of dog needs and how that specifically applies to the animals that we're working with.
Amazing. I just want to make sure people understand that you work for Dogs Trust and who Dogs Trust is, because if you're in North America, we don't have a Dogs Trust over here. We have the SPCAs and the Humane Studies who do amazing work on their own. But in the UK and Europe, and also parts of Asia as well too, but it's a bit different there. They have Dogs Trust, which is the world's largest dog charity. And for Europe and the rest of the world, they have Dogs Trust Worldwide. Can you tell us a bit about Dogs Trust?
Yes, so like you said, it's the largest UK dog welfare organisation. There's 22 sites across the UK that I help look after the behaviour teams for a couple of those sites. And yes, they are a rehoming organisation, so they take dogs in and then look to move dogs into new homes as quickly as possible. And then I'm also a trustee for Hope Rescue in Wales, so like I said, quite used to seeing sort of the different sides of rescue, and therefore, like, thinking about how to apply different things regardless of setups. So some of our sites are like 150 kennels, and then some all the way down to sort of like 30 kennels. So a big variety in the setup, the number of dogs. Some are rural, so they have a bit more space. Some are city based, where you've got to be a bit more clever about how you're moving dogs around and how that then impacts on their needs and their welfare. So hopefully there'll be something for everything in the presentation.
And I will make sure you're going to be focused on dogs, but my cat Spark, who likes to be involved in everything, he's just behind me because can you come over here? No, he doesn't want to. He doesn't want to be held. Usually during presentations, he likes to put his butt in my face, which is really great. Typical cat. But he gets very excited to hear other people's voices. So if you do hear meows, that is Spark.
They always seem to know when you're just going live, don't they?
It's like they put their little paws together and they're like, ha ha ha. But even for cats, like I was just thinking about how you mentioned the hot dog juice and the popsicles. You can make a cat popsicle out of catnip. And I think I was talking to my friend who's a veterinary nurse, and she was mentioning how she was making her cat popsicle out of like tuna juice. And I was like, why don't you add catnip? And I think these are things that we just tend to forget about, how simple and cheap it can be, because the world is really expensive right now, and if whatever way we can do to decrease costs to improve quality of life is really important.
Yeah, definitely. And I always think of that in the UK we have like the Christmas saying, which is you like buy all the expensive toys for your children, but actually the thing they spend the most time playing with is the box. And we can apply exactly the same idea to dogs and animals, and we can look, there is a massive range of enrichment toys and activity things out and about at the minute, and we can look at those and then kind of copy them in a much cheaper way. So thinking about how they work and looking at, well, how can we do that with a cardboard box? Or even one of my favorite things is, often we all love animals, so we quite often have a few different pets at home, and if you do have any staff that have small furries, collecting some of the bedding, putting that in stockings or like a sack, and putting it in different areas of like the walking area, so the dogs have something to sniff and explore. There's so many things that we can do that actually don't cost anything.
So while you're thinking, for some odd reason, I don't know why my brain always turns to cats. I just don't know why this happens. But I volunteer at the Canadian Animal Task Force, which does spay and neuter clinics out to First Nations in Alberta. They do phenomenal work, but they also have a facility which is about a 20-minute walk from my home, which I really enjoy. I like things that are nearby. I like convenience. But they are trying to make sensory things, that they have the cats in their cages and they do a great job for that, but they wanted to make some sensory environmental things to improve the welfare. And so very simple thing is I was going plant shopping, because I do community garden allotment, as you guys call it in the UK, a community plot in USA, Canada, and I bought some catnip. And that's an easy way just to plant some catnip. Or there's some things that you can do even in your own backyard as well too, is to plant certain plants to improve the welfare of your dog or cat, but dogs especially. Or let's say if you have a little bit of green grass, well, take the dogs for a sniffy walk and just get people to volunteer and donate a few plants, and people will do it.
Yeah, it's a really great way to impact positively on the dogs. But what we also find then is if people who are coming in and looking to take these dogs home have a nicer walking area, and they have a better experience when they come to the shelter, they can imagine taking that dog on walks out in the real world, and that's what starts to build those bonds that we know are super important. Because we know, most people only go and meet one dog. You get one chance really to get that pairing right, and hopefully find that dog a happy home. So we know it's
Yeah.
sort of super important to also think about what experiences we can offer new owners and the dogs together
Wait,
to do that.
or even a potential adopters
Right?
as well too. So that's one big thing is like, you know, if you have all these sensor experiences or the wind chimes, you're decreasing the noise levels, you're, you know, improving the welfare, you know, very cheaply as well too. But you're engaging your community, which is huge. Like, you know, asking people, do you have a wind chime that you could put outside the kennel doors? Do you have plants that you're planting in your garden that you could donate us and propagate it for us? You know, what are these things that the community can be involved with? And when you have the community involved, you're then going to have an even more increase in adoptions, potentially, hopefully, fingers crossed.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just going to change the way the community feel about you being there. And that's going to affect word of mouth, which is hopefully going to build that experience and interest in what's going on. And even if you don't get adoptions out of it, like you said, you could get some volunteers come in and do some gardening. We have quite a few volunteers across different sites who, you know, help. Don't do much with the animals, but they help maintain the grounds, or they get a lot of enjoyment out of that. From a monetary side of things as well, there's often a lot of community grants that
Yeah.
animal welfare organisations don't always look at.
Yeah.
But you know, it's really helpful because you can do community grant for something like a community garden, which is maintained by volunteers, but then also impacts positively on the welfare of the animals.
Yeah, because if you make like a community garden, like a vegetable garden outside of your facility, which is a very simple and easy thing to do, because you just get 4 planks of wood, you just put some, and you put them together, you know, and you put some soil in there. You can then also feed the animals. So like, you know, dogs can eat carrots. And one thing I tell people is like, you know, so many of us throw away our food scraps. And like, why don't you freeze your food scraps, and just give it to your dog? Because puppies need to have the ice to chew and to decrease the pain from the teething. And so there's so many things. If you're going to grow things, it could be dog friendly things that you grow. And again, that's another way that you're engaging the community.
Yeah, exactly. There's tons of ideas, and I think a really great place to start is look at if there are other schemes already running. So, like if you did have other, like already have a community garden, approaching them and seeing if you can do some sort of collaboration type things,
Mm-hmm.
can be super useful.
Yeah. And I think that's also one thing is people think about rescue and they think about the kennels and they think about the dogs in the kennels, and they don't think of it as the facility. It's, you know, and that's what I really appreciate and I'm really excited about your talk, is because it is talking about the cheap and easy ways that you can improve the entire environment. It's not just one small thing.
Yeah, definitely. A big part of what we're going to be talking about as well, or looking at, is how we can improve quality of sleep, because that's something else that's super important. And again, we don't need to spend a lot of money doing that, but we know that sort of generally speaking, dogs should sleep around sort of 30 to 40% of the day, probably more for some dogs. But we know shelter dogs generally speak about 2.8% of the day. So a massive difference.
Yeah.
So we can put a lot of effort into improving that quality of sleep,
Yeah.
which is then going to help support the animals.
Well, and I think this is one thing people forget about, is that when they get like a new dog from the rescue center, that the dog needs to sleep. And I think that people are like, well, why is the dog sleeping? They should be moving around, they should be jumping, they should be, I'm like, just let them sleep. Because the kennels are also, and I think this is one thing people don't understand, is they're a very unnatural environment. They're not a natural environment. Like the natural environment is our home environment. The dogs have been bonded us, you know, for how many decades, you know, 30,000 years. Oh, Norty just said that sleep and rest are so important. And I think that, especially for dogs that have a few issues that kind of need a little extra help, a little TLC is that they do need that sleep. They do need that rest. And especially when they're coming out of the facility, they need at least like a good week of sleep, or at least I would need a week of sleep.
Yeah, 100%. And I think identifying those individuals that might need that extra support as well, and having those conversations with the owners before they take them home, is really helpful for supporting, because it is always going to be different. And obviously we have things like the rule of three, where it takes 3 days to start to settle, and then 3 weeks to really settle, and 3 months to actually completely settle. But we know that's going to be individual for everybody, and identifying those dogs that might need that extra support is really helpful in building that going home plan for that dog to try and get that success.
Well, just again, this is why I love your podcast and I love your page, is because these are things that we think are, as professionals, we're like, okay, that makes perfect sense. But we forget that when we step into other people's homes, they don't know this knowledge. And that's why I absolutely love your page, is because, and please everybody, I think I did take your page in the description, put in the comments below as well too. Please go to your page, because you have all these ideas of how to help make shelter behavior simple for every person who's a new adopter or thinking about getting a dog, or a professional, because not all professionals know this either. They don't know that dogs should be resting, or that they should have these easy ways to improve their lifestyle.
Yeah, exactly. I think any information that we can do to support the dogs when they're with us, and then support them in that transition, is just going to seriously help achieve those perfect, semi-perfect matches that we want, or successful matches where the dogs then and the cats are staying in those homes long term, supported by the rescue and shelter, because that also then again is going to have that knock-on effect of people starting to talk about what great experience they've had, and encourage people back to the rescue for their next dog, or just telling their friends and neighbours. And I can't remember the exact numbers, but I know, that sort of rule of positive effect, which is, I think, for every person you or your business interacts with, that actually affects like 4 people. So we want to make sure that they have those good experiences.
Well, and I think this is one thing that, when I think of a shelter, like with my experience that I've had in Asia, I think of very deplorable conditions. I think of, oh, I'm sorry, did not pay you. I think, okay, do you want to be a part? All right, you don't. Welcome to the cats. But yeah, okay, you're over here now. All right, there you go. I think of dogs barking. I think of unclean environments, and that's often the negative misconceptions that we have online, is of this being a rescue center. But I think this is why, again, people should go to your page, and they should go to the talk, or any talk that you do, is because having a shelter or kennel environment is so much more than just having bars and a concrete area. It is to, like, some places in Dog Trust, they even have couches. They have couches that are donated to them, so the dog can get used to this home environment, and so that the adopters can then kind of go, okay, I can see this dog in my home.
Yeah, definitely. And again, there's so much that just offering that different type of bedding brings to the table. So we then do see improved sleep because it's a bit more familiar, or it's just comfy and different. And then, like you said, people can start to imagine those animals in their home. And that's really where we sell. Like, we know now, more than ever, rehoming is about online dating for dogs.
Yes.
So anything that we can do that shows what life will be like with their new pet is going to be a benefit, as well as then gaining that welfare benefit of having somewhere slightly comfier, being raised up off the floor, away from drafts. And generally, we can get things that are easily cleanable as well. So, there is wipe clean stuff available. We can get wooden furniture that can be fully sort of disinfected. So there's lots of options depending on the setup that you've got available.
Yeah, and this is what I think people don't, like, you might have bars, you might have the concrete flooring, but you can still fit one of those, I forget, it's 4x4 with the I'm talking about,
the Corindas.
That's it, exactly. Yeah, the Corindas. You can still get a Corinda. You can put that on your Amazon wish list. You can still get some bedding. If the dog doesn't eat the bedding, or they eat the bedding, you can get the Corinda, or you can. There's so many different ways you can just improve just a little bit in that location that you have, even how simple it might be. There's things that you can do to make the dog look comfy, or even put like little photos on the walls. Make it, make it into a home. And the one thing I also think people forget is smells as well too, is when you're cleaning or anything like that. This is a big thing, that you want it to be clean, but you also need, these cleaners can also cause stress to the dogs. So this is where, it's a big issue. I saw your face go, so go for it.
Yeah, well, the other thing with that as well is it's not always just about the smell affecting the dogs, but what we're also doing, and this is particularly important for the cat side of things, is we're removing that individual animal's scent profile from the kennel. So we know when animals first come in that first week, we're going to be taking biosecurity really seriously. We're going to be isolating those animals, and we want to be cleaning regularly. But particularly if we've got animals that are slightly longer term, we know that they've had their preventative health care, we know that there's no serious concerns there, we can just move, most of the time, we can just move to spot cleaning, which is still going to remove any waste, clean and disinfect those specific areas, but then leave clean bedding, in there so that the dogs or the cats have got that scent profile, and that's really going to help how well they're settling into the environment, because we can't even imagine what it must be like to lose our entire smell every day, and it's not even as important to us as it is to animals.
Yeah. Well, this is what I tend to forget is I'm very sensitive to smells, but my cat Spark and my cat Marmalade have, I think, 250 olfactory cells, you know, whereas I have, yeah, I got involved there, I know. Whereas I have a measly 5 million. And dogs also can have like 300 to 400, especially like a beagle. If you have like a scent dog in a kennel, that scent smell is incredibly important. And then also I think it's really helpful for people to, or rescues, and this is why for me, we can give them these, you know, easy ideas that they can understand and they can implement into their facilities, and they can then go, okay, I can do this. This is feasible. This is cheap. This is functional, and it's going to help the welfare of the animals in our facility.
Yeah, 100%. And I think we often think about welfare as, you know, just the dog being okay in the environment, but it's actually so much more than that. Having good welfare is what helps us with behavior modification. It helps us improve those dogs so that when they do find a home, they're more rehomable. They're going to have better skills to cope with that transition. It's about how we interact with people. Welfare is the entire picture of that dog's life while they're with us. It's more than just, you know, they're in a clean, warm kennel and they've got food, which would be, you know, our basic welfare. But we can take it so much further without a lot of effort a lot of times. And one of my favorite things to do as well is have like an enrichment chart or a table that we can have up in the prep area, so that it takes some of the thinking away from it as well, because we can be like, oh, today we're going to do this, or tomorrow the dog can have a stuffed Kong. And that means that if we've got volunteers who are coming in, they can be in the prep room and they can start making up some of this, put it in the fridge, put it in the freezer, so that the staff can just, or if it's other volunteers who are cleaning the kennels, getting the dogs ready, we can just grab and go. The only thing that I would say around sort of food-based enrichment is a lot of the time, you know, these dogs are being fed twice a day, and depending on the setup of the rescue, like most of the rescues I work with, the staff go home at 5 and then they come back in at 8. That's quite a big period in between those two meals. So I would always recommend having some easy access food in a bowl and then putting enrichment on top of it if you're providing enrichment at mealtime, other than just providing it throughout the day, so that they're still able to satiate some of that hunger. They're not getting frustrated, but they can eat the food. And then once they've got a bit of food in their stomach, they can go back to the enrichment and really enjoy it, rather than being frantically trying to get at the food because they're pretty hungry.
Yeah, so I'm cat care certified in feline behavior and health, and so one thing they mentioned is that cats will actually eat 10 to 15 times a day versus 2 times a day. And so one thing that we forget about is that, and same thing for dogs, they eat. Sorry, I have construction truck going past. Can you hear? Is it okay?
A little bit is fine.
Okay, fantastic. Just add it, throw it into the mix. So I think about that, like, how many meals do I actually eat in one day? I probably eat two to three big ones, biggers, and then let's say 2 to 3 more small, itty bitty like snack ones, because everybody wants a cookie, right? You know, we all want cookies. But then if we give dogs in a shelter these 2 meals a day, and then you leave them for however long, they don't have the opportunity and to have that intrinsic need met. Another thing that I really find is interesting is that we get really excited for enrichment and we stuff these Kongs like really pat down, but a lot of dogs are not used to opening up these Kongs, and then they can get frustrated, and that frustrates a negative emotional state, and then they don't even want to interact with the Kong the next time it's put into their kennel.
Exactly. And the way that I always think about it is like a jigsaw puzzle. So if we've got like I'm not very good at children's ages, but say we've got like a 4-year-old who's never done a jigsaw before, we're not going to give them a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle of a cloudy sky, because they're not going to enjoy the process. They're going to either get bored. If it was my house, the table would be flipped over and the jigsaw would be on the floor, and then you're never going to want to do a jigsaw again. But if we do a 6-piece puzzle with, you know, their favorite cartoon character on, they're going to hopefully enjoy that, and then we can build their experience of that jigsaw as they develop and as they get better at it, so that we can get to the point where they can have quite a difficult puzzle and they enjoy doing it. And that's exactly the same when we're thinking about our enrichment for our dogs. You know, for enrichment to work, it has to be benefiting the dog in a positive way,
Yeah.
rather than us just feeling like, oh, we've put something in that dog's kennel, therefore it's fine. You know,
Yeah.
if you're going back and the food is still in the enrichment, we need to rethink the plan for that dog or that cat and make sure that we're giving things that they're actively engaging with and that we're seeing the benefit from.
Well, and that's what I think people was a great job for volunteers, is they can write down emotional records of, like, how is this enrichment going, and that's one thing, like, they can help each other out, and that's a great volunteer role. They can really feel like they have empowerment over as well too, and give them confidence because they're taking care of that one dog's enrichment, and they can then say, okay, how did they interact with this enrichment, and how can we use this to improve their life? And so I think for me it's something so simple but yet so special.
Definitely. And I think we're often worried about data because it feels very scientific and, we're all busy people and we don't want to add extra things to our life. But sometimes data collection can just be simple things like, did they eat all of the food? Did they eat 50% of the food? Did they eat 10% of the food? Because that's going to tell us how much the animals enjoyed or interacted with that item. So we can start to build these small profiles, which is going to tell us, if you did one piece of enrichment one day and they ate it all, and then the next day you gave them a different piece of enrichment and they only ate a quarter, well, maybe the one from the day before was the best one for that dog to start with, and then we can look at other options based around that.
And I think this is one other thing about enrichment, which I could probably we could talk about this topic for an hour, and I don't want to use up, I just want to use up 3 more minutes of your time and let you go because you have a busy day. You've already had like a 12-hour day. And I don't want to push you. I understand that that's important. But one thing I know for kennels is you have walls. Use the walls. Put smears against the walls. I think these are things that rescue workers don't know about. Is that you can utilize every single space in your kennel.
Yeah, definitely. And even if you, like you said, where you've got bars, you can tie things to the bars if that is the sniffy sniffy things that we kind of talked about earlier, or where we've got toys that we can tie on because the dogs get a little bit of resistance. And it depends on the setup of your kennels as well. If you've got mesh, if you've got kennels that are walled and then mesh in between each kennel, what you can actually do is tie a really long rope all the way through all of the kennels and then attach toys down. And if one dog starts to interact with the toy, the kennel next door the toy's going to start moving, and that's instantly going to be much more enriching than a toy that's just on the floor that the dog's probably not going to engage with.
Yeah. So another thing that I was thinking about, and we have just 2 more minutes left for anybody who's watching, is that if you're making the sensory garden that you're talking about, you can bring in a few leaves, you can put it on the outside of the door that they can just smell at any given time. So it's, I absolutely love that idea of, I was like mind blown for the idea of the tug toys on the sides. And I think, again, for tug toys, people can make it out of their old t-shirts. These are, again, reducing costs however we possibly can. It's a simple French braid, just tie the knots, and there you have a toy.
Yeah, exactly. And what I used to do is, where we do have dogs who you chew up part of the blankets or rip the blankets with their claws, I'd take those blankets home and just cut those strips exactly like you said. And then it's super easy to make a snuffle mat. You just need a bath mat with some holes in. You tie one knot and then keep repeating that. And then exactly like you said, if you want to make tuggies, you just do a plait. And I do quite an impressive plait now, I've been told by some of my female colleagues.
There you go.
But it's just, you'd literally tie a knot in the end, 3 pieces of rope, and then cross them over. And you can look all of this stuff up on YouTube now. That's the most amazing thing.
Yeah.
Like if you search YouTube toilet roll enrichment ideas, you'll get like 300. So there's tons of options available to us.
And also one thing you can do for volunteers, and I've done this before, is create like a volunteer margarita night, and you can all go for margaritas and make snuffle mats together, which again, make sure you wash it after you spill your margaritas on it, because we don't want to have that on the dog stuff. But it's an easy idea to, again, you're engaged in the community of, like, or a pub where you can go, okay, let's make some snuffle mats for these environments to help this, the shelters in our area. or to make these things that we can all do. We can, or anybody who's interested, is to get a beer night or a pub night or margarita night for snuffle mats, and that's an easy thing that you could just get a bath mat and just make it all, or just binge watch Bridgerton, which I think we're all doing right now. But I want to make sure that the ladies are saying that you have creative enrichment. They're all saying that this is wonderful tips, and they're really enjoying all of it. But it is late for you. It is 7:45 in the UK. It's 12:45 in Calgary. So I have the rest of my day ahead of me. But I don't want to keep you because you've been amazing. You've been talking to me for a while, and I don't want to push it. But do you have any last words I can you want to talk about?
Yeah, so for the talk in October, like I said, it's going to be based around how we can use the hierarchy of dog needs to support dogs in our care. We're going to be talking about a low-cost enrichment, like he said, but also looking at how we can kind of build that overall welfare picture for dogs rather than just focusing on one thing. So it's hopefully going to be really useful because there's lots of different ways we can apply the information that we're going to be talking about.
Perfect. Oh, and I remember an idea I had when I was from Dog Source, and I want to input it. You can also ask local restaurants to donate their old towels that they would have from their areas, and you can make that into snuffle mats. And then you have, it's washed, it's clean. You have all those smells bringing in as well too.
Yeah, definitely.
So I remember that from the Dog Source training that I had. Okay, do you have anything you want to promote? Any talks that you're doing ahead of time? Any pages that you want to talk about before I let you go?
Yeah, so I'm doing a couple of different talks. They're normally sort of shelter-based, but with a focus on everybody. So hopefully anybody can get benefit from those. And they'll always be posted on my Facebook page. Again, that's Simplifying Shelter Behaviour. And the podcast is the same name, and that's on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And there's a new episode coming out on Wednesday. So we're going to be looking at Controlled and Leashed for Cats. So that should be really exciting. So 2 weeks. Yeah, so 2 weeks ago we have Leslie McDevitt, who's amazing and obviously came up with a lot of the concepts for Controlled Unleashed. And then this week we're going to be talking to Beth Brown about how we use those concepts with cats in our care. So that's going to be really exciting.
That would be my two are very scaredy cats, but I'm sure that they'd benefit from that. So I'll definitely be listening to that. Okay, thank you very much. I hope you have a great rest of your evening, and I hope everybody else has a great day. And they've Norshi just said thank you to us both. So you've had some great comments, and I really appreciate your time.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I can smell my dinner cooking, so I'll
okay, I'll go eat my lunch.
You.
Okay, you take care.
Thanks very much. Bye.